Part 21. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fay. Chapter 202. Chapter 202. A Stone. Li Ju felt that she did suspect that the relationship between Lin Yan and Mo Sang was more than just cooperation, but she never expected that Lin Yan was actually the person behind Mo Sang. That's right. I once saw them having a secret conversation in the room. I don't know what they were talking about, but Mo Sang's attitude towards Lin Yan was clearly that of a subordinate towards his superior. Mo Hui was worried that Li Ju wouldn't believe it, so he explained eagerly. Li Ju touched his chin and fell into deep thought. I really didn't realize that Lin Yan was hiding so deeply. Qi Jinkai also squinted his eyes, and a dark light flashed across his eyes. What else do you know? Qi Jinkai asked. Mo Hui thought about it carefully, and suddenly, he seemed to remember something. Mo Sang seems to have something that Lin Yan wants in his hand. What? I don't know exactly, but it seems like a stone. Li Ju frowned. Stone. Mo Hui showed an uncertain expression. It should be, after all, the Mo family's minerals are in the hands of Mo Sang, but speaking of it, I have never seen that kind of ore before. Qi Jinkai asked, what kind? Mo Hui scratched his head and looked troubled. I was also peeking at it, but I didn't see it clearly. I only knew that the stone seemed to have lines on it. Stones with texture? Etc. Li Ju's eyes suddenly changed, and something flashed through his mind. Stone, Lin Yan, Qian. Money. Almost instantly, all the trivial and vague clues in Li Ju's mind were connected. That stone is probably. Li Ju lowered his eyes, his face so gloomy that it seemed like water could drip from his face. The slender white fingers clenched tightly, making a small sound, and the breath around him became depressed. Damn it, why did she think of it? She should have been alert when she found out that Lin Yan had nothing to do with Qian. This Lin Yan is really good. How dare you do such a thing in front of her? Li Ju took a few deep breaths to calm down her breathing. Afraid of being seen out, Li Ju glanced at Qi Jinkai subconsciously, only to find that the latter also had his eyes slightly lowered and seemed lost in thought. Qi Jinkai, Li Ju called tentatively. Qi Jinkai turned around, his expression returned to its previous state. Huh? What's wrong? Li Ju sighed softly and said, it's nothing, it's getting late, let's go back first. Qi Jinkai nodded. As for Mo Hui, because he provided such an important clue, Li Ju did not hand him over to Qi Jinkai for the time being, but had him taken away. The two of them left the bar. The rain had stopped outside, and there was still a damp smell in the air. Jing Ai was leaning on the hood of the car, bending over to smoke. When he saw the two of them coming out, he immediately put out the cigarette in his hand. Sir, madam. Go back to the hotel. Yes. Along the way, Li Ju was very quiet and said nothing. He kept his head down and didn't know what he was thinking. Qi Jinkai noticed something was wrong with her and asked, what's wrong? Li Ju raised his head, his eyes confused. Huh? You have been silent since Mo Hui said those words just now. Why, is there anything wrong with his words? Qi Jinkai looked at Li Ju with his eyes. When he said this, his tone was calm, nothing unusual, but there was a feeling of temptation for no reason. Li Ju blurted out naturally, there is a problem, and it is a big problem. Oh. Lin Yan, although I have not been in contact with him for more than a week, I also know that he is an out-and-out interest-oriented person. He has become the person behind Mo Sang, and he must have made many suggestions for him. Just for a stone, it's unbelievable no matter how you think about it. Hearing this, Qi Jinkai lowered his eyes and twitched the corners of his mouth, feeling amused by the suspicion that flashed through his mind just now. How can that be possible? End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fay. Chapter 203. Chapter 203, Brother and Yan still wants to give me extra lessons. So what are you going to do? The doubts in his heart disappeared, and Chi Jinkai asked with his lips raised. Li Ju leaned back, stretched out his right hand to rest on the back of his head, and said, "The soldiers are coming to block the water and cover up the soil. I want to see what kind of medicine Lin Yan sells in the gourd. The weather in the south has always been erratic. As soon as we returned to the hotel, the sky was filled with dark clouds. The rain kept falling until midnight, so they could only stay in Angkan for one more night. Early the next morning, Chi Jinkai had someone book the earliest flight back to the imperial capital. The moment the plane landed, Li Ju, who had slept all the way, slowly woke up, rubbed his eyes in confusion, and said, "Are we here?" Chi Jinkai, "Yeah. Why didn't you call me?" Chi Jinkai glanced at her lightly, "Can I wake you up?" She fell asleep so hard along the way that she didn't wake up even after hitting her head on him countless times. After leaving the airport, Li Ju took out her mobile phone, looked down at the several missed calls that the old man had made to her, and said to Chi Jinkai, "Grandpa is looking for me, I'm going back first, no need to send him off." After saying that, he took the suitcase from Jingyi, who was following behind him, turned around and left alone, and gradually disappeared into the sea of people. Jingyi was a little confused. "Master, where are we going now?" "Back office." "Yes." Li Ju was walking on the street, dragging the suitcase with one hand and pressing the buttons with the other, and called Mr. Li back. "Hello, Grandpa. It's Xiaju, are you back?" Mr. Li's voice sounded in a good mood. Is Xiasai with you?" Li Ju stopped and looked at the red light not far ahead. He said calmly, "He has something to do, so he should leave early." "Then do you need me to send someone to pick you up?" "No need, I just have to go find someone, so I won't go home yet." Fine." After explaining to Mr. Li, Li Ju hung up the phone and raised his hand to stop a taxi. "Go to the affiliated number 1 middle school." The number 1 affiliated middle school, whose full name is Takyo University Affiliated Middle School, is the high school with the best teachers in Takyo University. Hiyao is studying here. At the gate of the first affiliated lieutenant colonel, Li Ju was leaning on a telephone pole on the side of the road, with her suitcase lying at her feet. It's lunch break now, and she has an hour of free time. The students entering and leaving the school keep looking at her with strange expressions in their eyes. Li Ju didn't care. He took out his mobile phone and dialed a number, "Come out." 2 minutes later, Hiyao, wearing her school uniform, hurriedly ran out of the school gate and stood in front of her, bent over and breathing heavily. "Boss, why are you here?" Li Ju stood up straight, took back her phone, and looked at her steadily. "I remember you have a rental house nearby." Hiyao nodded, "Yes." That was what she planned to use as a temporary base, and it was very close to the school. Li Ju picked up the suitcase and said to her, "Let's go to your rental house." "Ah!" Hiyao's face suddenly showed astonishment. "But boss, Brother and Yan will give me tutoring later. Even if the rental house is close, it will take more than 10 minutes to go back and forth, but Brother Enyan only gives her 5 minutes to rest. How can she come in time?" But Li Ju didn't give her a chance to refuse and directly dragged her away. "As for your grades, it doesn't matter whether you make up for them or not." "Hiyao. That's too much." Whether Hiyao wanted to refuse or not, it was useless now because she had been dragged along several streets by Li Ju. Finally arrived at the rental house, Hiyao leaned against the wall, almost breathing out her heart, liver, and lungs. "Oh my God, she hasn't walked this much in a long time. And that's even while carrying such a big suitcase." Hiyao took out the key and opened the door while looking at Li Ju sadly. "Boss, how could you bear to enslave an underage girl like this?" However, Li Ju said that she was very tolerant. And when he entered the room, He glanced sideways at He Yao and said disgustedly, "It seems you should strengthen your training. Walking this far would mean death." He Yao. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 204. Chapter 204. Li Ju, I want the monitoring of the institute. He Yao cried sadly, "Boss. I am a mental worker, okay." Li Ju stepped into the house. Although the house was not big, it had everything needed and was neatly arranged, as if someone came to clean it frequently. He Yao put the suitcase at the door, raised her head and held her waist and asked, "Boss, what are you going to do?" Li Ju turned around and said, "I remember you seem to have a computer here." "Yes, I have. As a hacker, that is a must." Li Ju raised her lips and smiled, "Help me check something." He Yao's lips twitched when she heard this. "It's just to check something, why do you have to go all the way to her small rental house? Isn't the internet cafe opposite the school nice?" But there was no other way, after all, He Yao could only take out the computer without any complaints. "Boss, what are you looking for?" "Surveillance video of the Association Research Institute." He Yao almost choked to death on her own saliva. Her pupils suddenly widened, she looked at Li Ju in horror, and her tone of voice could not help but rise. "What did you say?" "Research Institute." Li Ju nodded, making sure she heard correctly, "Yes." He Yao swallowed her saliva with lingering fear and said, "Boss, are you kidding me? Is it possible to look at that thing casually?" Li Ju raised his eyebrows and looked at her calmly, "Do you think I'm joking?" "But boss, that is against the rules. If the president finds out, I will definitely not be able to escape from the dark room for 2 months." He Yao just wanted to cry to death. Why did their boss always act so irrationally and cheat on his teammates? Every time you do something like this, it will bring them all down with them. The previous few times were some outrageous things, but this time it's better. Should the association's expressly prohibited regulations treat it as a decoration? And it's easy to find out if you just check the institute's videos. Don't you call yourself the #1 hacker? You can't even do this, He Yao. Isn't this the same thing? If something goes wrong with the institute's surveillance, the people from the association won't be able to find out who did it. The president would know it was her even if he thought with his feet. Isn't it obvious to tell people this?" He Yao was about to cry but had no tears. She almost knelt down in front of Li Ju. "Boss, you have to tell me why you insist on checking the institute's surveillance, right?" Li Ju lowered her eyes, her long eyelashes casting a shadow. After a while, she said, "Look, which mole is so bold?" He Yao frowned, "What? The mole? Is there a mole in the association?" "Boss, what is going on?" Seeing that Li Ju looked strange, He Yao also put away her playful smile and said seriously, "The mole you are talking about means." Li Ju raised his eyes to look at her, his eyes were dark and seemed to be full of emotions. "Lao San," she said, "the strange stone, may have been taken away by people from the Mo family." "What?" He Yao jumped up in shock. She couldn't believe that this was true, but when it came out of Li Ju's mouth, she had to believe it even if she didn't believe it. "You are saying that the Mo family has a mole in the association, and that mole also stole the strange stone?" He Yao suddenly remembered the previous auction. Could it be the exotic stone that the man named Jian brought out at the previous auction? Li Ju nodded, "It's very possible." He Yao's face suddenly changed, and she was furious. "Them? How dare they? It's so random." "Boss, have you told the president about this?" Li Ju said, "Not yet, don't worry." He Yao was shocked, "Isn't this urgent? People have provoked you right under your nose, Why are you still in a hurry? End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fay. Chapter 205. Chapter 205. As long as you can take a leave of absence. Li Ju said, if the president knows, some people will also know. He Yao frowned. The president is not clean around him. Anyway. Li Ju didn't say much. You need to adjust the institute's monitoring first. He Yao nodded, okay. She took out her computer and typed on the keyboard with both hands quickly and flexibly. A bunch of incomprehensible codes kept flashing on the screen. A few seconds later, as she hit the last key, a video appeared on the screen. Done. He Yao said, this is the monitoring for that period of time you want. It's all here, but... He Yao asked, how are you sure that the inner ghost did it at that time? Li Ju raised his eyebrows and explained, the strange stones in the institute will be remarked at certain intervals. The previous one has this date on it. He Yao suddenly realized, no wonder Li Ju was so sure. She smiled and said, boss, I'm convinced by you too. They all just use the strange stones directly. Who would be free to check if there are any marks on them? Only Li Ju is so perverted that he can even clearly remember the latest date marked on the strange stone. Li Ju glanced at her and said, I thought photographic memory was a normal human reaction. He Yao. That's your normal reaction, right? Li Ju ignored He Yao's rolling eyes and stared at the surveillance camera tightly, not missing any detail. Suddenly, Li Ju stretched out his slender index finger, pointed at the person in the center of the screen who was wearing a white coat and couldn't see his face, and said, check who he is. He Yao looked in the direction she pointed and said, okay. The fingers jumped quickly on the keyboard, and almost instantly, the person's information appeared in front of Li Ju's eyes. Boss, this is the information I found from the association's archives. Hearing this, Li Ju raised a smile and patted her shoulder with appreciation. Okay, I know you are still of some use. She is the only one who can sneak into the association's archives and retrieve information so quickly without anyone noticing. He Yao's lips twitched. So she is just a tool, right? She looked at Li Ju sadly, her tone a little aggrieved. Boss, you dragged your suitcase all the way to come to me, just to make it easier for me to check information. Li Ju scanned the person's information and replied casually, what else do you think? He Yao, it hurts my heart. In Li Ju's heart, is she only of this use? Oh, by the way, you have other uses. What? Help me inform Lao Shi and accompany me to Zhu the day after tomorrow. He Yao's eyes twitched, and a black line slid down her forehead. Very good, she is the #1 hacker, but now she has been reduced to a correspondent. Boss, why don't I go with you? Lao Shi has been in retreat recently to write songs and find inspiration. It's better not to disturb him, He Yao suggested. Li Ju raised his eyebrows and looked at her with interest. Do you want to go? He Yao's eyes were bright and she nodded quickly. She was almost suffocated in school. If she didn't go out for a breath of fresh air, she would really suffocate to death. Li Ju saw the longing look on her face, raised her lips and smiled softly, saying, okay. He Yao was happy. Unexpectedly, Li Ju's voice changed and he said, as long as your brother and Yan can approve your leave. However, this probability is approximately 0. He Yao's face fell. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fay. Chapter 206. Chapter 206. How are you and Xiaosai getting on? He Yao wailed resentfully, boss. Li Ju stretched out his hand to stop her. I'll give you a chance to go together. It's up to you whether you want to come. He Yao's mouth twitched sharply. This is called giving her a chance. Knowing that the term was about to end, brother and Yan would never agree to give her so much leave. She simply didn't want her to go. He Yao sighed deeply and could only bow to reality. Alright, she should just go to school and do her homework. Fighting, killing, and intrigues are not suitable for her. After Li Ju got the information, he became more confident in his guess. She came out of He Yao's rental house and went back to Li's house without any further delay. If you don't go back, the old man will start talking about it again. Miss, you are back. Joe's mother, who was trimming flowers and plants in the yard, saw Li Ju get out of the car. She happily threw down the scissors in her hand and ran over to help her carry the suitcase. Feeling the weight on her hand, Joe Ma frowned. How did the eldest lady carry such a heavy luggage alone? For no reason, Joe's mother complained a little about Chi Jinkai. Miss, why didn't the third master send you back? It would be a bit rude for a girl to carry such a heavy luggage, right? Hearing the slight complaint in Joe Ma's tone, Li Ju couldn't laugh or cry. Joe Ma, I didn't let him send it. It's not like I can't carry this luggage by myself. Joe's mother grinned and said, in that case, Miss is really strong. What's so big? The two people walked in the door as they spoke. Mr. Li only heard the second half of the sentence and asked subconsciously. Old man, I said that the eldest lady is very strong and can lift such a big luggage by herself, Joe Ma said. Mr. Li adjusted his reading glasses on the bridge of his nose, took a closer look at the suitcase in Joe's mother's hand, frowned and said, why doesn't Xiao Ci send you back? Li Ju took off his shoes, put on his slippers, and walked towards Mr. Li. Grandpa, I didn't let him give it to me. Oh, that's it, Mr. Li said. How about it, do you have fun going to Anzong these days? There was a smile in his eyes, and the wrinkles on his face were squeezed together and turned into a chrysanthemum. It's okay, I'm quite happy. If you don't count the mentally retarded people I encountered, I should be quite happy. Well, that's good, Mr. Li nodded, looking very satisfied. Mr. Li waved to Li Ju to sit down, and he also sat opposite her. The purpose of letting you go out with Xiao Ci this time is mainly to cultivate your relationship. Come on, tell me, where are you now? Li Ju's face stiffened. She never expected that the first thing she would do when she got home would be for the old man to ask about her love life. Li Ju lowered his eyes and glanced around secretly. Joe's mother carried her luggage to the bedroom upstairs. There were no other people's shoes at the entrance, which meant that Li Chen and the others were not there. In other words, she and Mr. Li are the only two people left in the old house now. Li Ju. Had she known this, she wouldn't have come back so quickly. Xiaju. Seeing that Li Ju didn't reply for a long time, Mr. Li thought that the relationship between her and Chi Jinkai was not going smoothly and he couldn't help but frowned. Is it Xiaosai who bullied you? No, Li Ju retorted immediately. Then why don't you speak, what happened? Li Ju shook his head gently. It's okay, Grandpa, please don't make random guesses. Then you and Xiao Ci, Mr. Li still refused to give up. Li Ju twitched the corner of his mouth and had no choice but to bite the bullet and said, we two are pretty good. Hearing this, Mr. Li finally smiled. That's good. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 207. Chapter 207 Large Biochemical Site. He was relieved to know that the two of them got along well. After all, this marriage contract was brokered by their elders. If the two people are not in harmony, it is their fault. The night is getting darker, the fog climbs up the window, and a warm yellow light shines through the bedroom on the second floor. Li Ju was lying on the bed, talking on the phone with Chi Mao Yi. Ajiu, how have you and your third brother been playing these 2 days? Good. Chi Mao Yi rolled her eyes, and her tone was full of ridicule. What do you mean it's okay? I saw the third brother came back with a smile on his face, and said, "What have you been doing these 2 days?" Li Ju raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Chi Jinkai. Did you see it wrong, or was it because of something else?" Li Ju said. "When we were in Ankan, we didn't see him in a good mood. Why are you smiling so much?" Chi Mao Yi made a sound and said, "I'm not wrong. I think third brother has been having a lot of fun lately." "So what?" Chi Mao Yi covered her mouth and chuckled, "So I think you will become my third sister-in-law soon." Li Ju glared for a moment, and then said, "You'd better care about yourself first." Chi Mao Yi curled her lips and said, "I don't have a boyfriend, why do you care about me? Then find one." Chi Mao Yi twitched the corner of her mouth. "Sister, do you think that when you fall in love, it's like you and the third brother do, and it's all assigned?" Hearing this, Li Ju smiled slightly and said, "That's not certain." Chi Mao Yi frowned, not understanding what she meant. Just when I was about to ask, there was a knock on the bedroom door. "Ajiu, I won't tell you any more, someone is looking for me." After saying that, Chi Mao Yi hung up the phone. She lifted off the quilt, stood up, put on her shoes and went to open the door. Standing outside the door was Chi Sijin. He was wearing black pajamas, with a loose collar, revealing a large piece of white collarbone. His hair was wet and dripping, draped casually behind his back. He had obviously just taken a shower. Seeing that it was him, Chi Mao Yi leaned against the door and raised her eyebrows and asked, "Why are you knocking on the door if you don't sleep at night?" Chi Sijin put his hands in his pockets, narrowed his light green eyes slightly, and asked, "Did you cook something?" Chi Mao Yi nodded. She didn't eat much for dinner. She was hungry just now, so she went to the kitchen to cook noodles for a midnight snack. "How do you know?" Chi Sijin smiled lightly, "Little ant, don't you smell anything?" Chi Mao Yi sniffed lightly and smelled something like burning. Her expression changed immediately. She pushed Chi Sijin, who was standing at the door, away and hurried to the kitchen. "My face." However, no matter how fast she was, it was too late to save her noodles. Chi Mao Yi turned off the fire with an expressionless expression, and looked at the unknown black solid mass in the pot, and her heart collapsed. Chi Sijin also followed her to the kitchen, stood behind her and teased, "Are you trying to commit suicide by taking poison? This thing will kill you instantly if you eat it, right?" Chi Mao Yi turned to glare at him angrily, her eyes sharp and murderous. "Why didn't you remind me earlier?" Chi Sijin helplessly spread his hands, "Little ant, I just finished taking a shower and wanted to come down and make a cup of coffee. Who knew I would stumble upon this biochemical scene? Fortunately, my grandparents are all asleep, otherwise you would have killed them too." "You." Chi Mao Yi was so angry that she didn't know what to say, so she snorted and turned away. The object in the pot was still emitting steam, and it was sticky and stuck to the wall of the pot, and it looked like it couldn't be washed away. Well, she cooked some noodles and scrapped a pot. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 208. Chapter 208. Take back what you just said. Chi Mao Yi looked at the mess she had made and cried without tears. She just wanted to have a midnight snack. Why was it so difficult? At this moment, her stomach growled unexpectedly, as if in protest. Chi Mao Yi. Chi Mao Yi closed her eyes, smashed the jar, and murmured in a low voice, "No way, Belly, you are a mature belly, you have to learn to feed yourself." Chi Sijin, who heard her words clearly from the side. Chi Mao Yi choked her mouth. She had no choice. It was so late, and the last bag of noodles at home turned her into a biochemical weapon. There was nothing else to eat in the refrigerator, so she could only endure it for one night. Thinking of this, Chi Mao Yi turned around in despair and planned to go upstairs to the bedroom. The next second, Chi Sijin grabbed him by the collar. "Wait a moment." Chi Mao Yi turned around and asked angrily, "What are you doing? She is in a bad mood now that she has nothing to eat. He'd better not mess with her." Seeing the angry and resentful expression on Chi Mao Yi's face, Chi Sijin couldn't help but laugh. The light green eyes were curved, the corners of the mouth were slightly raised, and a crisp laughter overflowed from the lips. Chi Mao Yi's ears tingled when she heard it, and her face couldn't help but be dyed with a blush. She stared at Chi Sijin with wide eyes. "Why are you laughing?" Seeing that she was getting angry, Chi Sijin tried hard to suppress the smile on her lips and said, "What do you want to eat? I'll cook it for you." Chi Mao Yi was stunned, obviously not expecting him to say that. After all, in her impression, he had never been so kind. It seems that Lu Qingran and the others were right. In the past few years abroad, his temperament has changed a lot. However, Chi Mao Yi still made a face. "I don't have any ingredients at home, what else can I do?" Chi Sijin raised his eyebrows, "But I think there seems to be something in the refrigerator." "Those are just leftovers, how can we cook them?" Chi Sijin. "Okay, feelings are just scraps in your eyes?" He helplessly held his forehead and said to Chi Mao Yi, "You go out first, I will make you food." When she heard that there was indeed something to eat, Chi Mao Yi's eyes suddenly lit up, and she looked at Chi Sijin with eyes full of light. "Really?" Chi Sijin nodded, stretched out his hand to push her shoulders, and pushed her out the kitchen. "Well, go out and wait. She should not stay here any longer, otherwise she might cause harm to this place." Chi Mao Yi was very angry at the undisguised disgust in Chi Sijin's tone, but there was nothing she could do about it. They were cooking for her now. She can only be obedient and wait outside. Chi Mao Yi sat on the sofa, supporting her chin with her hands, looking boredly at the cactus not far away, and carefully counting the thorns on it. The sound of chopping vegetables came from the kitchen in an orderly manner. Listening to this sound, the food should be good. Chi Mao Yi guessed and yawned. Before the supper was ready, Chi Mao Yi felt that her eyelids suddenly became very heavy, and she gradually lost consciousness. When Chi Sijin came out of the kitchen with a plate of fried rice, he saw that Chi Mao Yi had fallen asleep on the sofa. Chi Sijin raised his eyebrows, put the dishes on the table, stepped forward and shook her shoulders. "Sister-in-law." Perhaps she noticed a shadow suddenly cast in front of her eyes. Chi Mao Yi slowly opened her eyes, with a dazed look in her eyes that did not dissipate. She rubbed her eyes, sat up, looked at Chi Sijin, and asked, "Are you ready?" Chi Sijin pointed to the fried rice on the table and said to her, "I put the fried rice on the table. Eat it while it's hot. I'm going to bed." After saying that, he turned around and went upstairs. Chi Mao Yi looked at his back and suddenly felt that although he was a bit annoying at ordinary times, he was still quite good sometimes. "By the way, don't forget to wash the dishes. Also, get rid of that mess in the kitchen quickly, otherwise when Auntie comes tomorrow morning, she will think there was a thief," Chi Sijin said while standing on the stairs. Chi Mao Yi's face darkened. She took back what she just said, this guy's mouth was still so annoying. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 209. Chapter 209. Mr. Li, future granddaughter-in-law. On the other side, Li Ju looked at the hung-up phone in his hand and sighed. This girl is always making noises like this. The next day, the sunlight outside the window fell and spread on the soft big bed. Li Ju stretched out her slender white arms to block the dazzling sunlight, opened her red lips slightly, and yawned. Going downstairs, Mr. Li had already gotten up and was sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. "Good morning, Grandpa," Li Ju said. "Well, Xiaju is awake. Why don't you sleep a little longer?" Mr. Li adjusted his reading glasses on the bridge of his nose and looked at the time. It was only 7 o'clock. Why did Xiaju get up so early today? Li Ju walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of milk, and said, "No, I can't sleep. Actually, it's because the sun is too bright in the morning and I can't sleep at all." "Grandpa, why did you get up so early today?" Li Ju raised his eyebrows. Not only did the old man get up early today, he was also very energetic in his dress, which was completely different from his usual casual look. Hearing this, Mr. Li smiled and said, "The doctor will be here shortly." Li Ju frowned. "Doctor? Grandpa, what's wrong with you? Did something happen to the old man's health when she was away these days? If this is the case, how can Li Chen and Lim Wei still rest assured that he is at home alone?" Seeing that Li Ju's expression was filled with worry, Mr. Li quickly explained, "Don't worry, I'm in good health." "Then why did you ask the doctor?" "What's wrong, miss? You don't know, this old man is not seeing a doctor, he is basically seeing his future grandson-in-law." Joe's mother came out of the kitchen with hot porridge and said to Li Ju with a smile, "Future grandson-in-law?" Li Ju's eyebrows rose. Could it be Li Tingzi's girlfriend that he mentioned on the phone before? "My eldest brother's girlfriend is a doctor." Mr. Li nodded with a smile, "Yes, his medical skills are still very high. Your eldest brother was injured on a mission this time. I heard that he saved his life thanks to her." Li Ju just unscrewed the cap of the milk, raised his head and took a sip. When I heard this sentence, I was caught off guard and choked. Cough cough cough. Well, she thought, she knows who it is. "Miss, please drink slowly," Joe's mother said quickly when she saw Li Ju coughing badly. Suddenly, Jo Ma's eyes fell on the milk in her hand, and she was stunned. "Miss, why did you get up so early in the morning to drink something cold? It's not good for your stomach." Li Ju waved his hand, "It's okay, I'm used to it. Xiaju, DRG will come later. You can also take a look and see how your elder brother's vision is this time," Mr. Li said. Li Ju twitched the corner of his mouth and replied, "Brother's vision, should be good." When Ji Yunchu arrived at Li's house, he did not go in immediately. Instead, he paused at the door and looked at his cell phone. The last message displayed on WeChat was sent by Li Tingzi before. "Sorry, Grandpa seems to have misunderstood my relationship with you. It's okay, don't take it to heart. Actually. Since." Then there was nothing more. Li Tingzi only sent 2 words and then the news disappeared. Perhaps because of some temporary tasks, there was no movement for several days. But Ji Yunchu felt that he seemed to have something to say to him but hadn't finished it yet, so he kept waiting. In the end, I didn't wait for any news from him, but I waited for a call from Mr. Li. Ji Yunchu stroked his forehead helplessly. "I don't know where Mr. Li got her clinic phone number and asked her to come over for treatment. But I know that the drunkard's intention is not the wine, but there is no way to shirk it. I feel like I'm going to be useless. I finished a summer assignment in 2 days and used up a whole tube of pen ink. My right hand hurts and I feel like my muscles are strained." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 210. Chapter 210 Big Changes. "DRG, you are here. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Please come in." Ji Yunchu took a deep breath and pressed the doorbell. Joe's mother opened the door, saw her, and invited her in with joy on her face. Ji Yunchu smiled politely at her, but as soon as he entered the door, he looked up and met Li Ju, who was sitting opposite Mr. Li having breakfast. As their eyes met, there was an awkward atmosphere secretly flowing. "Ji Yunchu." "Li Ju." Ji Yunchu's hand to change his slippers was frozen in mid-air, and he could not lift or put it down. It's really strange. She obviously didn't do anything, but she felt guilty when she saw Li Ju. Li Ju, on the other hand, ate every spoonful of porridge with great enjoyment, as if he didn't even recognize her. Dr. Ji, good morning. Mr. Li smiled and greeted Ji Yunchu. Ji Yunchu came to his senses, looked away from Li Ju, and said with a smile, "Good morning, Mr. Li. Have you eaten? How about eating something together? I'm sorry for calling you over so early." "It's okay, Mr. Li, are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere?" Ji Yunchu got to the point directly. "Huh? Ah, well, I seem to have some insomnia recently, let's not talk about this for now. Drg, please sit down first, and I will ask Mother Joe to make you a cup of tea." Ji Yunchu. Helping, Ji Yunchu could only sit down first. "Come on, Xiaju, let me introduce you, this is Drg." Mr. Li took Li Ju to sit down opposite Ji Yunchu and introduced him to her. Li Ju's lips curled up slightly. "Hello, Dr. Ji. Dr. Ji, this is my granddaughter Li Ju." Ji Yunchu forced a smile and said, "Hello, Miss Li." Mr. Li secretly poked Li Ju with his arm, and his eyes hinted, "How is it?" "Li Ju, very good, but are you sure she must be your granddaughter-in-law?" Mr. Li, humph. That brat's eyes are almost glued to Drg and can't get off him, what do you think? Li Ju, I understand. Li Ju turned to look at Ji Yunchu and raised his eyebrows. Okay, now Li Tingzi really committed himself to her. Ji Yunchu's naked eyes gave her goosebumps. She quickly turned away and asked Mr. Li, "Mr. Li, why don't you tell me what's wrong with you?" Mr. Li nodded, "I've been suffering from insomnia recently, and I sometimes feel flustered during the day." Ji Yunchu exhaled a breath, opened the medicine box he carried with him, and began to check Mr. Li. Li Ju watched from the sidelines, gradually becoming bored, so he simply started playing with his mobile phone. Just when Ji Yunchu was checking Mr. Li, Joe's mother suddenly walked in, frowning and said, "Old man, the second lady is here." "Li Yun? What is she here for?" Li Ju raised his eyebrows. Mr. Li spoke calmly and waved his hand, "Let her come in." Li Yun was let in. When she saw Ji Yunchu and the medical equipment she was holding, she was stunned and said, "Grandpa, are you sick?" Mr. Li said, "I have some old habits." "What are you doing here this time?" The tone was very cold, showing no concern at all in her words. Li Yun's face was slightly stiff, but he recovered quickly. She took out an exquisite invitation from her bag and handed it to Mr. Li, saying, "Grandpa, this is the invitation from Grandpa Yun to you. It says that you are invited to attend Miss Yun's birthday party." Ji Yunchu, who was feeling Mr. Li's pulse, paused slightly with his fingertips. Mr. Li looked at the invitation and frowned, "Why should I go to such an occasion suitable for young people?" "This." Li Yun said, "If that's the case, then I'll push it for you." Mr. Li nodded. "Grandpa, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first." After saying that, she turned around and left without any hesitation. This unusual appearance made Li Ju raise his eyelids. How many days have passed since we last saw each other? Her temperament has changed quite a lot. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 211. Chapter 211. Ji Yunchu, did you and the third master have a fight? Li Yun walked out of the door and immediately took out his mobile phone from his bag. "Hey, Arong, what you told me about your cousin before, can you tell me again?" Li Yun looked at the deserted street in front of him, but his thoughts had already flown to nowhere. She went to the Yun family as a guest before, and she seemed to have accidentally seen the Yun family's family portrait. That doctor just now, why does he look so similar? But the photo was too blurry and she didn't dare confirm it. I don't know what was said on the phone. Okay, I'll be right over. Li Yun hung up the phone, looked back at the Li family's old house, and couldn't help but tighten his knuckles on the phone. The next moment, she opened the car door, got in the driver's seat, stepped on the accelerator, and drove away. In the room, Li Ju was confused about Li Yun's abnormality today, but he didn't take it to heart. He only focused on Ji Yunchu. "Mr. Li, your work and rest have been a little chaotic recently, but there is nothing wrong with you." Ji Yunchu put the checked items back into the medicine box and smiled helplessly. This old man Li is also true. In order to see her, he actually came up with the trick of pretending to be sick. "Okay, I'll pay more attention in the future," Mr. Li responded with a smile. "Well, I'll give you another prescription if you follow it. Your insomnia will be solved soon." Mr. Li said, "I just wanted to ask, I heard from Tingzi that DRG is a Western medicine doctor. How come he has such in-depth research on Chinese medicine?" Ji Yunchu smiled when he heard this. "You're serious? It's just out of interest. It's not a deep study, so I can only show you the small problem of insomnia." "DRG, you are so humble." Mr. Li did not believe that Ji Yunchu was only interested in traditional Chinese medicine. He had cold legs before and had dealt with Chinese medicine, so he could naturally see that Ji Yunchu's medical skills were more than just interesting. At a young age, he already has Chinese and Western medical skills, but he opened a psychological clinic. This guy is really interesting. The smile in Mr. Li's eyes deepened. Such an outstanding girl, if she could become a member of their Li family, he would be able to laugh out of his dreams. Thinking of this, Mr. Li gradually looked at her differently. Ji Yunchu trembled at the sight and quickly lowered his eyes, not looking at Mr. Li. "Mr. Li, if nothing happens, I'll leave first. There's still something else to do in the clinic. Won't you stay a little longer?" "No." Li Ju saw this and said, "Grandpa, let me send DRG out." Mr. Li nodded, "Okay." Ji Yunchu breathed a sigh of relief. After saying goodbye to Mr. Li, he quickly turned around and left, his back slightly hurried. Li Ju followed her out of the door and said with a teasing smile, "Why does our always calm and self-controlled DRG act like a shy little daughter-in-law today? Are you so nervous about seeing a doctor?" Ji Yunchu's mouth twitched. "Who has a little wife?" "I was scared when I saw you." Li Ju asked, "Am I that terrible?" "It's not that scary, I'm just a little surprised to see you. Didn't you go to Ankan with Third Master? Why did you come back suddenly?" Hearing this, Li Ju sighed softly. "It's a long story." Ji Yunchu stopped and turned to look at her. A thought suddenly flashed in his mind. "You shouldn't have quarreled with Third Master, right?" Li Ju's eyes twitched. "Why do you all have such strange focuses?" Ji Yunchu caught the key word, "one by one?" "Who else?" Seeing her curious and gossipy expression, Li Ju simply shut her mouth and stopped continuing the topic. End of this chapter.